What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine. I'm joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk or subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. We are, or I am, live from the 2025 NFL Combine. Spoke to Omar Khan today. Plenty of news and headlines to go over, including the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback search, the possibility of trading for Matthew Stafford. That, look, we didn't get a yes, but we definitely did not get a no, possibly extending George Pickens this offseason, and much, much more. We're bringing everything from day one of the NFL Combine. Nick, it's absolutely beautiful here in Indianapolis. How you feeling down in the DMV, my friend? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I went to the driving range yesterday because it thawed out a little bit over the weekend, which is always a good time. And then tonight, I'm just gonna sit back, relax, and watch a little bit of Full Swing. So I got a full golf Monday and Tuesday going on here before we really get into it on the NFL Combine.
That's beautiful. That's it's as good as it gets for a back-to-back day to do a little golf, watch a little golf, make a little golf. It's a good time. It's a good time. Let's dive into the Pittsburgh Steelers day one here. Omar Khan spoke to the local media this morning in a little personal scrum, and then spoke to everybody at the podium for the rest of the national and other reporters that are here at the NFL Combine. And to be honest with you, I think he had a lot to say. There are some years where Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, who has never spoken at the NFL Combine, never will speak at the NFL Combine, have these big sessions, and there's not really much you could take away. You can look at it and say, all right, cool. This was fun, but it was nothing more than a typical Tomlin Tuesday that you're looking at going, nothing big, splashy, or important was really said. In this one, there was plenty to talk about. And in years past, we've talked quarterbacks with Omar Khan and everybody else. In years past, we've talked contract extensions for Najee Harris and other wide receivers. And I mean, Brandon Ayuk, and he openly, said things got public, and it was what it was. And you just look back and go, oh, man, we should always ask a year out about the negotiations and how things were handled from what could have been super crazy the year prior. But you look at today, you look at what was going on at the Combine today, and I feel like he addressed quite a bit and was honest enough to say, I'm not going to give you the answers. I'm not,
I can't give you all the ingredients to the hot dog. You might not like it.
He didn't give us that, but he gave us enough, and he gave us some hints about where the Pittsburgh Steelers are headed, and then was very straightforward about their process at the quarterback position, their thoughts on Najee Harris. I mean, he very openly said the Steelers plan to bring back Jaylen Warren and tender him, and even hinted at, Matthew Stafford and George Pickens and everybody in between. And I think that's where we start here. We'll begin with the quarterbacks. I want Omar himself to go through the quarterback plan, how everybody envisions this, and then we'll dive into other options on the outside.
I know you guys are going to ask about the quarterback situation. I'll tell you guys as much as I can. The reality is last year we went into this understanding that we had 3 quarterbacks in the last year of their deal. Here we are until we get one of those guys or 2 of those guys or some combination of them signed up. All options are on the table. Had conversations with both Russ's people and Justin's representatives, and with that, we'll see where it goes, and open up to any questions.
Omar, where does it stand? I mean, are you kind of going to feel it out and see what each one decides? Have you decided maybe which one you would like to lean toward? Where does that stand?
I think ideally, like to sign one of the guys that we had last year. But the reality is they're both free agents. So until we get one of those guys under contract, all options are on the table.
Was the feedback from them that they're as interested in a return as you guys?
I believe they're interested in coming back.
In your mind, is it one or the other? Is there a scenario where both end up back in Pittsburgh?
The way I look at it, it was a positive experience with all 3 of those quarterbacks. I don't know how realistic it is that all 3 will be back. But if there's an opportunity for there to be a combination of, a couple of those guys to be back, we'll be happy with that.
Might you consider looking outside? almost? Might you consider outside?
You know, Jerry, until we have someone under contract, all options have to be on the table.
Is it a desire for you to have the deal done before free agency, or would you be okay with letting those guys?
No, it's an ideal scenario. You'd like to have this done before the start of the league year. Obviously, that who you sign impacts, the type of receiver, you may go after, or how you build the rest of the team. So all that has an effect.
My immediate reaction, in person and now, is the same, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers have a clear-cut plan. It's just about, can you put that plan together? Can you go get the quarterback that you want to get, and from there approach wide receivers and everything else? And I think it's smart, something we've talked about a number of times, about the Pittsburgh Steelers having to have a quarterback before you go into free agency, because you're not going to get the quarterback that you want once free agency starts, and you're not going to get wide receivers. Chris Godwin, Darius Slayton, Cooper Kupp, whoever. Nobody's coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers saying, Skylar Thompson's my quarterback right now. Sounds good to me. That's just not realistic. I also took the free agency timeline as the Steelers are well aware that once that happens, that once that gate opens, the floods are coming in, and they will have no shot at getting the reasonable deal that they expect for either of these guys. Now, I asked a couple of questions to some sources out here and have not gotten answers yet. I will have more tomorrow. That is what I was told. But I asked two questions. Did the Pittsburgh Steelers call about Matthew Stafford, and is it still Justin Fields? And the response I got was, I know the answer to both of those things, or I have the answer to both of those things, excuse me, but I will let you know more tomorrow. And I took that. We'll leave this up to interpretation, because that's what they left me with. I took that as it's still Justin Fields. Maybe they called about Matthew Stafford, but we'll dive into that here in a second. But it's still Justin Fields, still seems to be the guy. And I'm very open with the plan that the Pittsburgh Steelers have in place. I'll ask you this. How much more comfortable and maybe confident are you in the Steelers now that you've actually heard Omar Khan talk about this situation, instead of sitting around just going, this is very quiet, everybody's talking about everything, and all we know is that the Steelers may not have even called anybody, and that they're just waiting for this to explode in their face?
Well, fortunate enough, March 10th is 2 weeks away. So that gave me a lot of confidence that they know that there's a deadline coming in 2 weeks, that they want to have this all taken care of by that deadline in 2 weeks, which means they've already been working on it a lot. Now, that's something that everybody knows, but this is now confirmed that they have a plan in place, that they're trying to get something situated, that they want to get this behind them as much as we do, right? They want this to be in the rear view. They want to have the quarterback position figured out. And it sounds like they do have a clear-cut plan. It's just a matter of who is going to kind of step up first to get that over the finish line. It sounds like that they've been trying to reach out to one thing and one player, and they have talked to another player, but it seems like it's as he mentioned, it's Justin or Russ. That's the most preferable option, which means they're trying to get something over the finish line with a guy that they perceive is the number one option. It sounds like they made a decision. I think that is what should give Steelers fans hope, because this entire time it's been sounding like, well, it sounds like they talked to Russ. It sounds like they talked to Justin. It sounds like they reached out to Matthew Stafford's camp. It sounds like this. At least now we know that there is one of two guys that they view as their number one option. It's the two guys that were here last year.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that they're open to the possibility that things don't work out. If they've gotten over the finish line, awesome. But I want to address the Matthew Stafford thing, because he did open up about that. And I think a couple trains of thought on where this could have gone and what the message really could have been if he was sending one.
I'll say, like I said, all options are on the table. We don't have we don't have one of our guys under contract, so I have to. I owe it to everyone to keep all options on the table. I'm not gonna say that that's accurate or not, but all options are on the table.
I'm not going to say if that's accurate or not, but the Steelers definitely called Matthew Stafford, right? They definitely. I'm not saying it went anywhere, but there was definitely a phone call. Am I wrong there?
he didn't deny it, but at the same
Yeah.
time, that's about as far as he went. That was a very well scrubbed PR statement from Omar Khan on the question that was posed to him, which was specifically about Matthew Stafford. I'm not going to say it's guaranteed that they called. I say it makes sense that he's saying that, but honestly, if they did, that means that they have an entirely different viewpoint of their team and their season next year than I do. I don't think they're a quarterback away. If they have called Matthew Stafford, that means that they believe that they are that piece away, especially considering that price has been rumored to be around a first-round pick, which would be a massive swing for the Steelers.
Yeah, a first-round pick and $50 million a year.
Well,
That's
that too.
That's wild. That's wild. But I will say this. I took that as they called, just because they have to call, because agents talk and teams talk. That call didn't have to be serious. It didn't have to mean anything, but it had to look serious, because I took it as it's a little bit of a warning to Justin and maybe Russ to say, look, we have to have we have to negotiate this. We have to have these conversations with other quarterbacks, because if you go into free agency and are waiting for your market, which, he didn't open up about that. He didn't have an answer for that. He said you'd have to ask Justin or Russ, their side of wanting to go into free agency. If that's the case, if they do want to go into free agency, he's got to send a bit of a warning shot just to say, look, you guys could do whatever you want, but we've got to do what's best for our team. And if, just like the other way around, just like if we're waiting too long to sign you, if you're waiting too long to sign with us, we might make a trade. We might make a move. That's kind of how I took it. I took it as just I wouldn't say like an aggressive warning shot, by no means aggressive, but just this is an answer to just kind of kick the tires a little bit and say, hey, I am going to make it known to the public that we do have to consider all options, and Matthew Stafford might be an option. Everybody else on the free agent market might be an option. That's how I took it. I took it as a little bit of a non-aggressive warning, just a simple PR answer. That's how I took it. It's a PR answer that indicates to everybody exactly what needs to be said without it being mean or straightforward or causing any tension. Just kind of get everybody involved to think a little bit. Am I too far off the cliff here? Too far off the rails?
No, earlier in this episode, I said that his answers just tell me that this organization knows that there's a deadline coming up and it's the opening of free agency. And that answer right there is him simply sharing that with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields of, hey, there is a deadline here for when, while you might be our preferred options, we're going to have to start calling and seriously considering other options. Like, if we don't get this deal done, we do have other options that we have thought of and we have talked about. You're not our only partners here. Like, you're not our only options. We do have to keep others open. So again, maybe just a little prod of like, hey, do something. Hey, call back. Hey, let me know what you think about this last contract I sent over, if you like it. It's a little prodding, a little bit of public gamesmanship of, hey, there is a deadline here. And not just are we keeping attention to this, not just are we making our fan base aware of this, but we need to make you aware and remind you that this is what we're thinking internally.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. And I think it's perfect. That's what I left today with. I left today thinking I showed up here in Indianapolis, which is beautiful. Shout out the city of Indianapolis, as always. And we all did. Everybody had concerns that the Pittsburgh Steelers were just lollygagging around, waiting for something to happen, being classic Pittsburgh Steelers, and just, we're good. We got Mike Tomlin, dude. We're going to win 10 games. Doesn't even matter. That's what I was worried was happening, that they were keeping all options on the table, that they would say things like, we want Just and Russell, but Aaron Rodgers had to be considered. Matthew Stafford had to be considered, and they were actually considering them. I left the press conference, and especially the scrum. He said way more in the scrum, which is where these videos are from. And for those of you who don't know, it's like before he goes up to the big podium, there's like 8 of us in a room, all the local media. We're allowed to ask him, questions before he goes out there, and usually his answers are a little bit more open and honest than it would be to the public. But I left that thinking the Steelers want to get this done. They'd preferably like to get it done sooner rather than later. And okay, they've had conversations with Justin. This is no longer guessing what Justin's side wants to do or what Russ's side wants to do. Everybody's spoken. There have been negotiations. Now, how quickly can those negotiations get done? And the Steelers want to get them done soon. So I feel way better about the whole ordeal than I did coming in here. And I think everybody else should too. Like, nobody should be sitting around going, oh, they're going to blow this. No, I think they have a pretty good plan. And I think Omar Khan, who some people were worried about coming in this offseason, I was not one of them, has an idea of where the Steelers should go and is trying to get them there. And I think that's a big one. All right, let's switch gears to George Pickens here. Any last thoughts on the quarterback?
No, you mentioned that this today was kind of an admission of, hey, they aren't lollygagging around. I'd still say that they're taking a little too long to make this decision and sign their quarterback. So I don't think I'd let them off the hook anyway, even though it's nice to know that, they see that March 10th is a deadline. They want to get this done. They have been trying to get this done. I will say that even if they get it done today, unlikely, but even if they get it done today and sign one of their quarterbacks, I'm still going to think that they took a little too long to make that decision.
Yeah. Look, I agree. I don't disagree. But it's good to, I really thought this thing was going to go into free agency and it was going to get real bad real fast. And it doesn't seem to be the case. So, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. All right, let's talk George Pickens. Omar Khan maybe gave away that the Steelers like George Pickens. I don't know. Hear for yourself.
I had a really solid exit meeting with GP, and I can tell you that he has a desire to be great. He has a desire to be great here. We have a desire for him to be great and to be great here. We'll see, with respect to the contract, we won't discuss that publicly, and usually those things are addressed at a later date.
All right, two things. My first thing, I believe a holdout for George Pickens is possible. Okay. My second thing is that maybe the Steelers are going to sign George Pickens to an extension. Maybe that's a possibility. I don't think I'm super sold on it yet. Like, by no means did I take that comment and say the Steelers are 100% signing George Pickens. But I will say that I think they're realistic about the situation. That's the best part about Indianapolis and about the NFL Combine. This is the first time that we get to understand that the Steelers are not being as terrible as our brains will convince us they are for the last 3 weeks. Because that's all we do is sit around going, this team's going to blow it all up. It's going to be wild. You don't even understand how to fix the changes that are about to happen because there's going to be so many. And then you get here and you realize the Steelers have a pretty good plan and they're seeing this stuff realistically. And I think the big thing is right now they see the wide receiver market realistically, and realistically speaking, there isn't anybody to replace George Pickens. So therefore they have to consider the option of extending him. And I don't know. I think that it's on the table. I'm still not saying it's likely, but I think it's more on the table than I thought it was 4 hours ago, 5 hours ago when I walked in here. Your thoughts?
I think that my mind still stays the same. I think that what Omar said there is they want him to eventually be their number one, that they would love for him to turn into the star centerpiece of the offense that he has the potential to be, but nothing there screamed sense of urgency to me. And I understand there's a chance George Pickens tries to hold out and says that he wants his contract extension before 2025 season even starts. But part of me also thinks maybe part of that really good end of season discussion between Omar Khan and George Pickens was, listen, we aren't going to talk extension with you because there have been issues. And there's a chance that conversation ended with, we're going to let you play 2025. And we would love for you to be the centerpiece of our offense in 2026 and beyond. It tells me that the Steelers organization, at least this is what I gleaned upon from this, is that the Steelers organization wants desperately George Pickens to take the reins, to mature, and to become the top 5 wide receiver we all know he has the talent of being.
Yeah.
But nothing in that answer told me that they are willing to pay the man and take the risk for everything else that he has been, for all of the late to practice stories, all of the late to game stories, all of the not paying attention or is distracting or is out of the play in a Hail Mary, all of that stuff, I think is still in the Steelers' mind. And nothing in that answer told me that there is a sense of urgency to get a contract done this summer. What it did tell me is they're probably not going to give up on George Pickens, which means a trade is unlikely now.
I don't know. Yeah, I agree with the first part. I don't think I agree with the trade. I think a trade. I think the right team calls with the right answer. That's all it's going to take. You know,
anybody offers enough, then somebody's on the table. Like George Pickens isn't hey, listen, bar none, this is a franchise cornerstone. We're not getting rid of him. He's not a TJ Watt, but I still would put that in the unlikely category.
Yeah, I mean, but I think I agree with that. But you never know. But I agree with the contract. That's where I stand too. Is the Steelers are not? I didn't take they're going to sign him. I didn't take this as he's already in negotiations. I took this as Omar's pushing this back to say in the summer we'll address it and we'll see how George looks in the summer and what happens come training camp and OTAs. And the unfortunate part is that the whole process is going to only hurt George Pickens' chances, because he's gonna potentially hold out, which is not going to look good on the maturity side of things, even though that's what he should be doing, is holding out. That's what players do, is they say, I'm not going to risk injury until I get a contract. And I don't care what your thoughts are on player versus team. I'm always pro player, even if that player has maturity issues. And I agree with that. Don't risk health at OTAs for a contract. I agree with that. But that's only going to hurt George Pickens. And I don't know how this ends. I don't know how this ends. I will say that the response was different than what Art Rooney said, which you have to take into account, because Art Rooney was George has a lot left to learn. Mike Tomlin was, George has a lot left to learn. Omar was, me and George had a great meeting, and we'll see what happens, and we want him to be great. And I think that's the first indication of maybe the Steelers are willing to see how this thing plays out. But again, if he doesn't get a contract this offseason, I mean, is he even gonna, if he doesn't show up to training camp, there's just no chance that the Steelers are sitting around saying, yeah, we're going to get to a deal. And I don't know how that turns out. That's why I say a trade is, when you say unlikely, I mean, he doesn't show up to Latrobe every day that passes. A trade is more likely. Out or trade him, you're going to trade him, because you're going to get something big for him, and it's not like, that's the thing. If this was a 4th round pick, you could say, who cares? But this is a 1st round pick on a guy that you don't see past this season. So maybe you could trade it. So I still think it's on the table, but I agree with you. I looked at it as exactly like you said. The Steelers would like to see this thing play out in their favor, with George turning into what they want George to turn into. How realistic that is, I mean, I don't know. I think that's everybody's opinion right now. Nobody could really state anything other. There is no fact in the matter of this. It is just, we will find out when we find out, and George will let us know come July. That's when we will find out. All right, that's day 1 of the NFL Combine. Tomorrow the players start. Super pumped about it. It's Walter Nolan, man. It's Darius Alexander. It's these big guys. It's Abdul Carter. I'm pumped. With that said, let's start answering questions, because there are a lot of them. Omar talked today. There's plenty to dive into. Everybody who's got them, toss them in the chat. I'm going to take 1 second just to remind everybody that tomorrow is our call-in show. So make sure, I totally forgot to put the announcement up there yesterday. But if you are a member or want to become a member, click on this link. Make sure to leave your voicemail in our inbox, and I will answer it tomorrow on the call-in show. Last week was rocking. It was, I mean, probably the most fun I've had on a podcast, no offense, in a while, just because the energy was brought by all of you. It was very appreciative, appreciated. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow. So make sure that you call, leave those messages. There's a lot to talk about, so toss it in there. And in the meantime, we'll answer all your questions now. Nick, I'm going to toss it to you. Anybody who has one, toss it in the chat. We'll get to it. Nick, what do we got?
Yeah, let's kick things off with Miguel. Always appreciate you. Miguel says, GP is a locker room cancer, needs to be moved for whatever they can get for him. Send them to either the Bears or Saints straight up. for DJ Moore or Chris Olave?
I mean, yeah, Chris Olave would be awesome. DJ Moore, I don't think I'm super into. I mean, like, yeah, I guess maybe, but I think he's 26 million a year. What's your thoughts on DJ Moore to the Steelers?
I mean, in this trade, I hate it. I I think either of these players, 1-for-1 for George Pickens, you are absolutely losing this trade. If you get DJ Moore and you get a little bit of extra draft capital along with them, I think it makes more sense. But DJ Moore coming over, if you have Justin Fields, you have that automatic chemistry and connection, but you also have that contract, which means it better work out. And if it doesn't, you're in some pretty deep water, and you just gave up on somebody who could be very good with Caleb Williams for somebody who has a bad contract and could potentially, falter in the city of Pittsburgh.
I agree. I don't like the DJ Moore thing. Chris Olave, I think I'm open to. I'm curious to see what Chris Olave could do with a good offense and a good quarterback. The Steelers don't have either of those, but I think he is an intriguing piece. I'd be more open to that. I also think the Saints would be willing to give up players with draft capital, because at this point they just need anybody. But I don't know how they're signing George Pickens to a deal. I think they're like $100,000 or $100 million over the salary cap for like the 8th year in a row. Yeah, I know it's not real. We're aware. But I don't think I'd be giving up George Pickens for anything. I think I'd be giving up George Pickens for the right amount. But besides that, I'd push it out a year, hope for the best. His talent level's worth hoping for the best. And unless somebody calls or you call them, it doesn't mean that I wouldn't explore a trade. I would definitely be exploring trades. But unless that right offer came, that really like, oh, I can't pass that up offer comes, I don't think I'd be trading George Pickens for just anything.
Let's go to Maddie, who says, hey, guys, do you think the Steelers know already who they're going with at quarterback and are just waiting until after the combine to announce it? Also, what do you think of Rondale Moore as a wide receiver option?
Good old Rondale Moore. My only thing with Rondale Moore is how many wide receivers under 6 foot can you have? There's got to be a cap on that to say like Calvin Austin, like Roman Wilson. How many guys? It's at some point you got to have a jump ball. I don't think the Steelers know who their quarterback is. I think they know who their favorite is and who they'd prefer at quarterback, but I don't think that they know for certain who is going to sign or who they're going to sign. I think that's still a negotiation thing. They're still working through this. And if they would announce it now. When the earlier they could announce a quarterback, the better for them, because there's nothing holding them back. It's not like it comes with any like extra like tomfoolery, I guess. And I would just look at it and say, like, as soon as you sign a guy and you announce it, which first off, Schefter, Rappaport, all Steelers talk, somebody would have that information. But that's the sooner you could start talking to wide receivers and their agents, which you'd want to do here in Indianapolis.
Let's jump down to Chris, who says, guys, the Steelers have given Tomlin more rope than any other coach in 18 years. How much of that is their intent to prove the Rooney Rule is valid?
Oh, none. Zero. I it's just a Tomlin thing. Literally nothing to do with the Rooney Rule or trying to do any of that. They just like Mike Tomlin.
Let's go to Cody Silva, who says, according to Ryan Fowler, the Steelers have a formal meeting with running back Ashton Jinty. If he falls to us, will your dreams come true?
I think everybody's dreams will come true. Here's the thing, though. I was talking to a Denver Broncos, Chad Jensen, who covers the Broncos for On SI today, and he said that unfortunately the Broncos would never pass up on Ashton Jinty, and they picked 20th. So doesn't look very hopeful for the Steelers. They got to meet with them. They'd be doing so many people dirty if they didn't meet with them. But the Baltimore Ravens met with them too, and I just look at it like it's a pipe dream. It would be awesome. I'm more curious to see where else they go. Ashton Jinty would be awesome. Don't get me wrong, but the chances, like it's a cool dream. It's fun to have. It's cool to sit here and say maybe Ashton Jinty can end up in black and gold. It would be just the best pick they could come up with. But I think as we get closer, those final mock drafts, there will be less and less of Ashton Jinty making it past pick 15. And in the meantime, I'm interested to see where they go from here. You know, the running backs, and it's what stinks. The running backs and that stuff doesn't even meet until Friday. So we'll see who they meet with, but I'm interested. Do they meet with Omari and Hampton? Do they meet with Caleb Johnson? Do they meet with Judkins and Henderson? Or how far down the list do they go of these guys? How many running backs do they spend time with? And how many running backs that they aren't going to go to pro days do they spend time with? Because that's going to tell you a little bit. Like, they're going to Oklahoma State's pro day. That's not, they never do that. You know, they're not going to, they go to Iowa's, but honestly, they don't always go to Iowa's, you know, like they're not going to UCF's pro day. So are they, you know, who are they meeting with that you're going, oh, that's a little out of the ordinary, and this might be the only time they talk to them, which means they have some interest. That's where my mind's going with this. I think that who they meet with next, I'm very interested in, but shows that we're spot on. That's this week, you know, it's all speculation until you get here. Then it becomes a little bit factual.
Yeah, not only did you have that conversation about the Broncos at 20, but earlier today, Mel Kiper mocked Ashton Jeanty at 6 to the Raiders. Yeah. So, like, he didn't even get to the Dallas Cowboys before he was off the board. So,
no, I was told by, again, Hondo Carpenter, Raiders on SI. The Raiders want Ashton Jeanty. If it's not a quarterback, they're going. There's just no chance he's making it to Pittsburgh. Would love for it to happen, but I don't think it's realistic.
Let's go to Marlon, who says, who will be easier to negotiate with this offseason? Is it Russ or is it Justin?
I would imagine it's Russ, right? I'm probably not alone on that. I think Russ wants to come back. He's looking at it like, I've made a boatload of money. I'd like to make some money this offseason, but I don't need $40 million. I don't need $30 million. You know, he'd probably settle for 20 and feel pretty okay about it. Justin, on the other hand, I think is a guy that understands he's got a market value and that there are teams that might be willing to sign him for quite a bit of money. And if he's thinking that way, then, you know, what's going to stop him from going to get that money? Who knows? But I think Russ will be a lot easier to negotiate with. They're going to spend more time negotiating with Justin, but Russ is going to be easier.
Let's jump to Pittsburgh Hornets, who says, did you see Omar's excitement when he was asked about the defensive line? Does this make you double down on your prediction from yesterday of 2 D-line players in the first 2 rounds?
Yes, 100%. Like the Steelers, look at the Steelers love this defensive line class. Everybody should love this defensive. They're so good. It's loaded from top to bottom. It's loaded. Like I think if I really, really sat down and went through it, I could probably come up with 20 names that I'd take in the first 2 rounds of these guys that I'm very comfortable with, you know, and like, it's crazy how deep this defensive line class is and how good they are, to the point where you shouldn't be passing it up. Nobody should even be thinking about passing up on a defensive lineman in this draft class. I don't know if they'll double down on it, but I'm feeling pretty good about my bold prediction there on a back-to-back defensive tackle, nose tackle.
Let's jump to Steve, who says, with all these issues with talented wide receivers over the years, like Santonio, Martavis, AB, Deontay, Chase Claypool, Juju, and now George, is it drafting bad actors issue, or is Tomlin being an enabler issue?
No, I don't think it's enabler is an aggressive word. I think in the Steelers facility, different people get away with different things, and more talented people get away with certain things, because you got to look at Santonio
Holmes.
Thank you. Why was I blanking there? Like, I don't know what was going on in my brain. He didn't really get away with a lot. They moved on from him. As soon as they can make an example, they made an example and they moved on from him. Martavis Bryant's the same way. Like, he didn't get away with much out here. Nothing at all. AB got away with so much. Everything. He got away with everything because he was the most talented player on the roster year in and year out, and he got away with stuff. Deontay got away with a lot because he was super talented. Chase Claypool got away with nothing. They wasted no time before saying, all right, he's gone. Juju was the same way, but Juju wasn't really an issue. Let's be honest. And now George is the most talented player on offense. Mike Tomlin during 2024 knew that if George was suspended or anything was happening, they were screwed and they could not afford that. And therefore he was able to get away with stuff. That's how it played out. I don't think enabler is the right word. I think that's too aggressive, but I do think that there are different variations of penalties and sternness from Mike Tomlin when it comes to these issues.
Let's jump to Smooty Booty. Appreciate you as always. Says, hot take, adults are hard to change, and not all these wide receiver issues fall on Tomlin, but some of them do, though.
Some of them definitely do. Some of them definitely do. I agree. That's exactly what I was saying. Like, some of them fall on Mike T, but like you can't change. I think it's how long the Steelers are willing to drag it out and how much of an impact it has on everybody around them. That's what's on Mike Tomlin is, is he willing to drag down the team and make everybody pissed? Like the players were pissed last year. There were a lot of guys that were upset that George was late to practice or late to games or causing all this. There were players that were not happy situation. How many of those guys is Mike Tomlin willing to piss off in the process of this by ignoring it? I think that's where it comes into play as like this is on Mike Tomlin's shoulders. But the wide receiver as a whole, like George is who George is. Antonio Brown is who Antonio Brown is. These people. That's who they came into the league as, and it's who they're going to be, and it's not going to change. That's not on Mike T. You can't tell somebody to be a certain person, and if they don't listen to you, that's on you. No, you tried. It's on Mike T when it comes to how far he's willing to bend before something breaks because of it.
We have a couple Matt Stafford mock trades that we want to get to here, starting with Enzo, who says, yo, Noah and Nick, give me your thoughts on this. Matthew Stafford for a first rounder, a third or fourth round pick for Cooper Kupp, and in free agency, you grab a cornerback, then grab defensive tackles, another cornerback, and a wide receiver in the draft.
I'm not giving up a first round pick for Matthew Stafford. I think he's worth a first round pick, but the Steelers don't, my argument here, okay, my argument against the Matt Stafford thing is if you were a team that just needed a quarterback, if this is the Steelers in a year, I think there's an argument to be made. Right now, where we sit, the Steelers' offensive line has 4 guys who are under the age of 25 who need more time to develop. Maybe that's just this year, but I doubt that they are an elite line in 2025. I imagine they show glimpses of taking a step towards an elite line in 2025, which is all you're looking for. They need to reshape their defense, especially their defensive front, which means that you're not going to go win a Super Bowl with 2 rookies and Keanu Benton on your defensive line. Like, that's just not realistic. It's not going to happen. And you don't have any wide receivers. So in a year from now, when you get the Darius Slayton and you figure out the George Pickens situation and you draft somebody and Roman Wilson is developed and Calvin Austin is the guy and Jaylen Warren and whoever you draft turn out to be great at running back and your defensive line is a year into this and phenomenal and Keanu Benton's an absolute monster, like when that is the team and your offense is elite, when the team, you go get Matthew Stafford, but that's not the team right now. The Steelers are build it so that you could plug your quarterback in. Hopefully Justin Fields is that quarterback, but it's not. That's my argument against Matthew Stafford is like, they're just not there. So for a first round pick, no. And a third for a Cooper Kupp, no. A fourth for Cooper Kupp, no. I don't think I'd do it.
Let's go to Brimstone, who says, speaking of trades, what would you take Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp for GP in the first?
No, I would not. No, I would not. I'd go if you flipped it around and got rid of Stafford and went Cooper Kupp and a first for George Pickens, I'd take that trade. If you went Cooper Kupp and a second for George Pickens, I'd take that trade. And I think that one's realistic. Like, could it happen or will it happen? No. But like, is that like a reasonable trade? I think so. I think George Pickens the second for Cooper Kupp would make sense. or Cooper Kupp in a second for George Pickens would make sense.
All right, let's jump to Chris, who says, Noah, what will it take for you to call Broderick Jones a bust?
A full year at left tackle. That's a full year, not 1 game, not 3 games, not 6 games, a full 17-week season, 18-week season, whatever, how many ever games there are at left tackle. That is what it would take, because right now he's not a bust. He's just not. Like, you could, there are excuses as to why he's not working out. And if you got rid of him right now and he went to the Rams, or he went to San Francisco, or he went to wherever and became an elite left tackle, that would be 100% on the Steelers for never giving him an opportunity to play left tackle. So I'm nowhere near calling Broderick Jones a bust, and I don't think anybody should be. I think if you are giving up on Broderick Jones right now already, you would probably not do very well as an NFL head coach, because you have to give these guys the opportunity. It's the same thing as, like, was Kevin Dotson a bust? No, clearly not. The Steelers just didn't do what they needed to do with him. That's what this comes down to, is you got to give this guy, this 22-year-old offensive tackle, a opportunity at his natural position. And if it doesn't work out a full season, yes, he's a bust. But right now he's just a guy who's playing the wrong side of the game, or the wrong side of the field, and might, has some serious work to do, but needs an opportunity to improve at his natural position.
All right, let's jump to Steelers fan 8, who says, if we don't go on a run in the playoffs this year, or simply win a playoff game, I say we move on from Coach T. Even I love Tomlin winning seasons, and they're nice, but playoff wins and Super Bowl wins are nicer. What do you guys think?
I mean, yeah, any single time. But realistically, that wouldn't happen. The Steelers wouldn't move on from Mike Tomlin probably ever. I don't think that's the case. I would imagine Mike T. He's 53 years old. Okay, Pete Carroll just got a new job at 73. So I'd hunker down. Strap in the seatbelt, put on your winter coat, because it's going to be a long one here, and we're going to wait it out, because it's going to be a long. My kids are going to know Mike Tomlin as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. Like, that's how long we got to see this go down.
Let's jump to Pittsburgh Hornets, who says, what gives you confidence that Omar Khan will get it done this offseason?
I think Omar Khan's a good general manager from what I've seen. I mean, he makes the moves that you need to make him. He doesn't always get it done, but he was making the right call and trying to get Brandon Ayuk last season. I thought that was exactly what the Steelers were supposed to get. They've made phone calls. Like, that's the part that you have to bring into consideration here when you're talking about this. Is I get that they ended up with Mike Williams last year at the trade deadline, but they called about Derek Payton. They called about Cooper Kupp. They called about Deebo Samuel. Like, they made all these attempts. They called about Devontae Adams. Like, they tried. It just didn't work out. They couldn't get a deal done. So and most of those guys didn't end up getting moved, or Devontae Adams went to the Jets, and that was his call. So I don't think that, like, the issues at wide receiver were Omar Khan. I think he tried, and then it came back to bite him in the butt that he didn't try earlier. That's the only mistake. I think he's drafted well. I mean, you look at Joey Porter Jr.'s a stud. Keanu Benton's a stud. Troy Fautanu has got all the makings to be a stud. Broderick Jones got all the makings to be a stud. Who am I missing? Zach Frazier, stud. Mason McCormick. You got to hope that this kid's got a lot of upside. He sure looked like he's got a lot of upside. Peyton Wilson. You got to hope in good things in Roman Wilson. He went out and got Patrick Queen for $4 million a year less than his estimated salary or his estimated market value, which is huge. I think he makes good moves. I got a lot of faith in Omar Khan. I think he's a good GM. He set up a team this past season to go 10-6 and start 10-3. And the Steelers should not have been a 10-6, 10-3 football team where people are talking about playoff contender and Super Bowl contender and all this at any point during the season. He put that team together. I have faith in Omar Khan. I do.
Let's go to Miguel, who says, seems as though the Steelers management and ownership is happy to revel in mediocrity.
I don't think they're happy to revel in mediocrity. I think that they have said 7, maybe 800 times in the last couple of weeks that they are super disappointed in the collapse that happened at the end of the season and that it's unacceptable. I mean, Omar Khan said unacceptable 6 times today. I don't think that they're happy about it. I don't think that they're going to make big, giant splash changes about it. But that's because Mike Tomlin's their head coach and they respect Mike Tomlin. They understand he's the guy that would get them where they need to be. You could agree with that or disagree with that. I think some days agree, some days disagree. But I think they are very upset. Like Omar, again, made it very clear. Like when I spoke to Rooney, he was not happy. He was not a happy guy at all. And Omar Khan, like I expected Omar to be like the pleasantly surprised, like we're going to figure this thing out. He was not. It was more so just like, dude, we are pissed. We are not happy about this. So I honestly get the genuine feeling that these guys are not very thrilled about what's going on.
Let's go to Steelers fan 8, who says, I think Frazier is going to be our next Marquise Pouncey.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Zach Frazier looks like an absolute stud, diamond in the rough. This guy is awesome. I love Zach Frazier and everything he stands for and as a football player. And, this dude's awesome. Plus, he does woodworking on the side. And, I mean, you're telling me that your grizzly bear West Virginia center who goes home and carves his wife a chair or something, which is a real thing that he does. Like, I just can't think of anything better. That's the guy I want in the middle of my offensive line. So shout out Zach Frazier. I agree.
Let's go to Chris, who says, do you guys think the Steelers are sticking it out with Pickens because they realize he has top 5 wide receiver upside, or because there's nobody else available to replace his presence on the field?
Yeah. I do think right now it's because I think it's a mix of both, but I think I lean more towards there's nobody to replace him. Like the Steelers can't go out and get another George Pickens somewhere. So it makes it hard. Like if T. Higgins was available and you traded George Pickens, signed T. Higgins and somebody else, that's huge. You did very well there. If you go out and sign Darius Slayton and go trade for Cooper Kupp and then trade George Pickens, you're not much better than you were a year ago. You're better, obviously, but you're not much better than where you were a year ago. And if you need somebody to take over a game, you don't have that guy. So I do think that it's because right now they don't have anybody to replace him.
Let's go to Vibin with the Dogs, who says, tell me one thing, Noah. Is that a mullet? I dig it if it is.
It is a wannabe mullet. We'll say. We're getting there. We're getting there slowly but surely. It might be shaved by the time it becomes a full mullet, but we'll see.
Now let your Cole Holcomb fly. Just go out there and try to match him by the beginning of the season.
Dude, I'm the guy that once a year, even though I look real ugly with the shaved head, just feel like I have to shave my head, and we're itching for it. We're itching for it bad. So we'll see.
Let's go to a YouTube user who says, how do you guys feel about Nick Chubb on the open market?
Yeah, I mean, he's not the worst move the Steelers can make, but I don't think that he's the move the Steelers are going to make or the move that they should make. I think Jaylen Warren and a couple of rookies sounds a lot better. I think Jaylen Warren and a rookie and somebody else sounds a lot better. If Nick Chubb was going to come in here and be your number 3, cool. But as your number 2 or your number 1, I don't think I'd be about it.
Let's go to Darian, who says, would you sign Jair Alexander if he gets cut by Green Bay? He would be a great addition for Porter and Corey Trice.
I want to say yes. But I don't know if the Steelers would be interested in him simply because he does come with some baggage, and I don't know how much baggage they're looking to take on, this offseason. It kind of feels like the last year has been getting rid of the baggage, and now they're going to try to get rid of more of it. I don't know if they're going to add some in free agency. So I don't think it's realistic for the Steelers to go out and get him. I do think he's a super talented corner, but I don't know if he's on the Steelers list.
Let's go to Steve, who says Trey Lance or Daniel Jones as Justin Fields' backup.
I don't mind Daniel Jones. I think Trey Lance is an experiment that I find interesting. I don't think he's good, but interesting, right? There's got to be something there for a guy that went 3rd overall. Something. I don't know what it is, but something's got to be there. Otherwise, he was just like you have to put him in the realm of possibly worst pick of all time. So I don't know, but I think I'm not totally off the Trey Lance's backup thing. I don't know, man. I'm curious. I think it's more. I think some of it has to do with like me being able to see him every day at practice and understand like, oh, this is why, or oh, this guy's got more than we think he does. You know, and I don't know what side of the coin he'd fall on, but I'd be very intrigued by it.
Yeah, he had that one throw at San Francisco 49ers training camp that everybody was like, oh, that's why. And then since then, it's the biggest mystery, not the biggest mystery, but it's one of the biggest mysteries in the NFL. Is like, what went down in that 49ers draft room where they said, let's trade the house for Trey Lance. And then it went south so quickly. And they ended up with Brock Purdy out of Iowa State as the guy that takes them to a Super Bowl runner-up instead. It's weird.
Yeah, to the point where like you didn't even keep him as a backup. You were like, nah, he's done. Like we got to get rid of him. He's so bad. We have to move on. Like that is such a mystery to me, and one that I would like to, I think, find out, to be honest.
All right, let's go to Shower Curtain, who says, would you take 2 different running backs in this year's draft?
Yeah, I definitely would. I'd go a running back a little bit early and then a running back late. I definitely would. I only went one in my mock draft today. You want to roast me a little bit for a second? I put together a 7-round Steelers mock draft. Ask me how many wide receivers were taken in it.
I'm going to say there's probably 0, which is probably not right.
One. There's 1 wide receiver. Take a guess at what round he goes in.
5th?
The 7th.
Jesus. Yeah. That's I may have missed the mark. I don't know,
dude. I just kept going, and I was just like, this guy's going to be available, and he's going to be way better than any wide receiver on the board. This guy's going to be available. He's going to be way better than any wide receiver on the board. It just, I don't know, got to a point where it's the 7th round. I was going, all right, well, they're probably going to draft Jimmy Horn, so I guess that's a name that we could toss in there. But I don't know. Something got over me, and I was just like, this just makes too much sense right now for this to go. I mean, think about it. Like, what's even crazier? People are going to roast me for this, but my first 3 picks are Walter Nolan, Darius Alexander, Will Howard, and then it goes Devin Neal out of Kansas, and then it just gets from there. It gets crazier and crazier. I don't know, but wouldn't be surprised if it shook out that way. I genuinely felt like this was accurate when I put it out.
I'll tell you what, that compared to what I was thinking about the Steelers draft being in January is such a departure that I think it might be close. Like that's what I'm saying. That's typically how it works.
That's what I'm saying. It just felt like I looked at it and I said, this is not at all what people expect to happen. Like this is pretty spot on. This has got to be close.
All right, let's go over to Chris, who says, what do you think about Jackson Dart since you opened up Pandora's box of quarterbacks in this draft?
Yeah, no, I'm not a Jackson Dart guy. I'm really not. People like him. He's going to climb up the board. He's going to go in the first round, most likely. The Steelers take a flyer on him at 21. I think they're crazy. And if they do, I just lost a guy. Like, if he turns into a franchise quarterback, he's going to see this clip and he's going to never tell me anything, which, risk I'm willing to take. I don't think I think in a normal draft, he's a 5th round pick, and that's just not I'm not taking a quarterback who is Will Howard is a 3rd round pick in any draft. That's how I view him. He's a 3rd round pick across the board. Cool. All right. Jackson Dart's a 5th round pick in a normal draft. In this one, he's got like the upside, the potential to be like, maybe we got something here. Chances are you don't, chances are you don't. I'm not a Jackson Dart guy.
All right. That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out. Oh, we got one. We got a last one. We got to answer Chris's question here.
Chris wants to know, Noah, would you be for drafting the Syracuse quarterback, McCord?
Yeah, I like McCord. I think if you can get him in the 3rd and 4th round, I would be okay with that. I mean, he's played at big schools. He's performed well at Syracuse. I thought he played pretty okay. I don't think he's a starter, but I do he's a guy that he's the Will Howard mold for me. I think he's a 4th rounder instead of a 3rd rounder, but I look at him and say in any draft, he'd go in the 4th round. And because of that, I'd be okay with that. Match the talent to the value to the pick. And there are so many quarterbacks in this draft that, like, Shedeur Sanders at 1? No. Cam Ward, top 5? No. In a good draft, these guys are second round picks. And that's where I stand, is like, don't match the value to the pick. And I think McCord is a 4th round pick across the board. And I'd be okay with that situation. I actually would.
All right, now it's a wrap.
All right. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out on your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. Make sure to call in to our members for our call-in show tomorrow. Leave your voicemail, leave your question. I'm fired up to answer them in the morning. And we will be live tomorrow here. Hopefully at a better seat than this one, because, I'm just staring at traffic right now and I want a nice Indianapolis view for this podcast. But we'll be live from the NFL Combine, day 2. Enjoy a beautiful one, hopefully in the Berg. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.